What is going on, Internet? My name is Lou, and I make Linux videos, and I put them on the Internet. Tonight I am very excited to give you a brief overview and look at Linux Mint 16. I believe that this particular release is a milestone for the project. I believe that it may be the most important release that the team has ever put out, and I'll tell you why. Cinnamon, which is the desktop environment that we see here, we can call it a desktop environment now because it no longer requires GNOME to be installed for Cinnamon to work. See, previously to Mint 16 and Cinnamon 2.0, it relied upon GNOME. So the Mint team now have wrote their own code base and forked everything they needed to from the project. So going forward, Cinnamon no longer requires GNOME. Well, what's the significance of this? Well, whatever the GNOME project decides to do in the future plays no bearing and has no impact on Cinnamon whatsoever. This is so crucial to the project. I feel like now Linux Mint can take any license with their desktop environment that they would like and is no means now going to be held captive by the decisions of the GNOME project. I mean, to put things into perspective, this is something that the Ubuntu team has been trying to do now for almost 2 years. They announced that they wanted to basically make Unity its own desktop environment, and it is still a compiz plugin and fails to be its own desktop environment and relies heavily upon GNOME. So I think that this is such a crucial step for the team. I think we're going to be able to see so many more enhancements and furtherance of this desktop environment now that they do not have to depend upon GNOME. It's really, really exciting. So, of course, with this particular release, you get things like updated software packages because this now sits on top of the Ubuntu 13.10 software repositories. And we get a whole host of other new improvements, which we'll go over briefly. So we're going to head over to Linux Mint's website, and we're going to look at some of these improvements here and these new features. So of course I mentioned Cinnamon 2.0. If we go into the system settings, which I think is very, very nicely done, if we come over and we can do a nice search here for sound, we see that the Mint team has included a nice interface to control all your system sounds. So that's one of the new features that the Mint team has included. You've got better user management. You can now change your password, name, login picture easily from the account details configuration screen. So if we clear this out, not only do you have access to account details, but it helps if I enter my password incorrectly. You've got users and groups. You can control things like who has access to the sudoers file. And if we come up to this little applet up here, we can get to account details. And we can change all sorts of settings here for the account details as well. Let's see, what else here? Better edge tiling. So the Mint team added this nice effect. So when you start to drag the window close to the top of the screen, not only does it give you this little gray symbol, this image to show you where you're going to be tiling the window, but also brings this little hint up on the screen, as you can see here, that says hold Control to enter snap mode and use the arrow keys to shift the workspaces. So I'm holding Control. You can see now that it's turned green at the top, from gray to green, and I can use the arrow keys to actually switch workspaces that this particular window will be featured in, and I can control that using the arrow keys. So I think that's a pretty cool feature. It has Nemo improvements, Nemo being the file manager here that Linux Mint uses. It was a fork of the old Nautilus file manager, which has seemed to have been gimped. The newer releases of GNOME and Gnome-Shell continue to remove features from Nautilus and strip it down. Linux Mint is bringing all of those features back in Nemo, which I believe is a fantastic file manager. So there's been a lot of improvements to Nemo as well. You've got the login screen, which I think looks great. If we open up the Mint menu here and we type in login, we can enter into the login window graphical tool that's included. Once again, I can't type my password. Wow, really? Third time's a charm. Okay. This is an HTML based light DM theme. I'm using the Mint X theme. You've also got clouds. You can organize and change different auto login features. And you have root login, so on and so forth. But you can add different themes to that as well and customize it. This particular light DM theme looks great. Looks really, really nice. So we've got drastic speed improvements to the Mint Display Manager, streamlined user interface, the ability to for the last logged in user to simply log in by entering his or her password, number lock support. You have a new USB stick tool where you can actually format a USB stick, FAT32, NTFS, and ext4. I used to use gparted for this, but which you can still do, but they have a nice little tool for that now. There's been various performance improvements, such as boot and login sequence no longer scans your system for ButterFS partitions. The Mint Display Manager no longer listens or communicates over the network. Update Manager now starts with a delay, so your session loads faster. Software Manager features significant speed improvements, and they've done some work to the Linux Mint 16 ISO as well. Now, the Mint team's been criticized for their Software Manager, and I think if you were not a fan of the Software Manager before, you're probably still not going to be a fan of the Software Manager. I don't think it's changed a ton of things. For me, I don't find myself using Software Managers. I'm a terminal guy, so Software Managers really play no big part in my day-to-day life with the distribution, but you know, for others it does. So one of the things, if we look for a package, we'll look for Firefox. We see now that it can display more than one screenshot for that particular package. You can read user reviews, and it gives it an overall score. We have 903 reviews for this particular package. So I think this Software Manager gets the job done. Is it the greatest? No, but you know, does it get the packages installed that you want? Absolutely. One of the other tools that I think is really, really nice is their Software Sources tool. And Linux Mint has been developing their own core set of tools now for some time, but you can change the mirrors for the main repositories for your system to ones that may be faster. Because this is based on Ubuntu, you can use PPAs or personal package archives. You can manage those from here. Additional repositories, your authentication keys, and it has a nice little maintenance option as well. I think that's a great tool. Speaking of tools, Mint has forked Ubuntu's Jockey tool, which was their driver management tool, and they've got their own tool now. Man, I am having a hard time with my password today. And for crying out loud, Lou. I am not going to edit this out. We're going to keep this rolling. Do I have cap locks on? No. Alright, so anyway, here is the driver manager. Right now I'm using the Novu driver, but I can easily install the NVIDIA driver or the Broadcom driver for my wireless card. So some of the other system improvements are safer kernel updates, faster boot sequence, better EFI support, improved out-of-the-box support for iOS devices, better support for Steam and its addition in the repositories in the featured selection of the Software Manager, additional private secure search engines in certain countries, higher apt priorities, apt recommends, better colors in the terminal, and better help support. There's been some artwork improvements here. So if we come up to backgrounds, we see that we've got some new backgrounds here, which all look very nice. You can add additional ones if you'd like to. One of the great things about Cinnamon is it brings some of the old settings that we knew and loved in something like GNOME 2, for instance, back to the modern desktop using modern technologies like different effects for closing windows, mapping windows, minimizing. I disable these because I like the system a little bit snappier without them, but by all means you can do that. You've got a way to change your font I did change the default font to the Droid Sans. That's my particular font of choice as of right now. You've got theme support. The Mint X theme, which is the one I'm using here, I believe one of the community members for Linux Mint actually developed this theme. I think it looks fantastic. This is more in line with Linux Mint releases such as 10, 11, I believe even 12. I think it looks great. I think this is very, very consistent with the GTK3 theme, Mint X theme. The default one is the one labeled Cinnamon, and there were some improvements to that, but I definitely prefer the Mint X theme. And like many options in Cinnamon, you can actually go online and download additional themes, additional applets, additional extensions, and you can go right to the Get More Online tab. So I was using this particular theme, I think it's called Baldar, previous to this Mint X theme here in Linux Mint 16. But you can even click the More Info. It's going to launch your web browser. You'll be able to read different user comments and read specifics about this particular theme from the author themselves. So I think that's really, really nice. Go to other settings. You can control the window borders, key bindings, your mouse pointer, etc., etc. Account details. You've got different applets. All of the one with a lock is installed by default and really is required by the system to provide its core functionality. Also, anything that you see with a little green button here is currently in use as well. And of course, there's the Get More Online feature for those. You can change your default applications or default how certain media should be handled by default as well. Linux Mint, and they've actually released desklets, I believe 1 or 2 releases ago, but it's very similar to KDE's Plasma widgets, but you can add these things simply by clicking on them and hitting Add to Desktop. This particular desklet is a clock, so you can place a clock on your desktop. There isn't many installed by default, but you can get more online. To remove them, you can simply right-click and remove the desklet. You've got different desktop features. You can show your computer, trash, you can show mounted volumes, and so on. Different extensions. Of course, there isn't any installed by default, but you can go online and get more. Hot corners. This is definitely reminiscent of elementary OS Luna's implementation. My favorite two would be Scale and Expo. So if I drag my mouse to the bottom right-hand corner, it gives me a nice scale, which is a brief overview of all my open windows. This is how I personally like to manage all my open applications. And then, of course, Expo, which is going to give me an overview of all my different workspaces. I can add them at will. I can also label these workspaces. So for this one, I could say Home. If I wanted to label this one, I could do so as well. Something like Multimedia. And then I can drag my different open applications over to any of the desktops that I want to. If you want to remove a desktop, simply click the X in the top right-hand corner, and that'll remove your desktop. Those are my two favorite hot corners and ones that I use all the time. I think this is also really neat. You can control your panel. You can have it at the top, which is what I prefer. You could also put it down at the bottom, or you can have two panels, top and bottom, which is the more classic style. And I love this feature as well. And if any of you watched my Gnome-Shell review, I said it would be nice to be able to control the size of a lot of these menus or different aspects of the user interface, and Linux Mint allows you to do that with certain aspects of the user interface. And in this particular circumstance, I like it to control the size of the panel, and my preferred size is 23 pixels. So I did change that. You've got your screensaver settings, edge tiling settings as well. What's nice about this is they've added a feature which does not exist in GNOME or even elementary OS for that matter, and this does exist in KDE. It allows you, when you want to actually tile, instead of using just half the screen like that, you can be a little bit more optimal and you can use quarters. So I could quarter just by simply dragging to the corner of the screen that I want, for instance the upper left or bottom left, and it will quarter these particular applications or windows, which I think is really, really nice. You can change different aspects about your windows, for instance, the minimize, maximize, and close buttons, what side of the window they appear on, and how many buttons are actually shown. Here's your workspace settings. And we have some of our other basic settings like startup programs and so on. We see that we're using Cinnamon 2.0.12. We're using Linux kernel 3.11. All of these settings are, again, somewhat basic. Again, here's our sound settings with the implementation to be able to change some of our different system sounds and customize those. Your login screen. We reviewed this already. Of course, device driver, software sources, and users and groups. So all in all, I really like the system settings panel. I think it's really nice. I'm using it in advanced mode. You can switch it to normal mode if you'd like. I like to have some additional features and settings available to me, so that's why I like to use it in advanced mode. And of course, you can, again, do a nice search and narrow down what you'd like to see available to you. Across the top panel here, by default, we have things like the Mint Update Manager. We have this nice sound menu that opens up here, so it allows you to control what you're listening to. The default multimedia application for music would be Banshee, which is really, really nice. You've got your network manager here. I have my mounted volumes manager, so I can actually mount. I have an external hard drive here. This is your account details. You can switch users, log out, power off. That's your notifications as well. Of course, we have a nice window list option up here to show all of our open windows and be able to control them from the window list. And our Mint menu, which we're all used to from using Mint over the last umpteen releases that they've had. So all in all, 2 thumbs up to the Linux Mint team. This particular release has been super stable for me. No crashes, no lockups. I think Cinnamon 2.0 is finally at a point where me personally, I can get what I need to as a power user out of it, and it's a comfortable desktop environment for me. I've been using it now for probably the last 3 to 4 weeks. I had Mint 15 installed previously with the Cinnamon 2.0 development PPA enabled, so I've been using Cinnamon 2.0 now for almost a month, and I really, really like it. I think it's quick, I think it's nimble, I think it's customizable. It's going to incorporate the point-and-click, more traditional user interface that a lot of longtime Linux users like, with new technologies and new advancements and new features. So I think it's a great combination of the two. I think that it looks great. It's elegant. This is a very professional looking release. It feels like a professional product. And I think, of course, being built on top of the Ubuntu system, you've got access to lots of software, lots of commercial software, and of course you've got access to PPAs directly, so you can actually get updates right from developers themselves to, a lot of the popular applications that you like, such as GIMP or even OpenShot, things of that nature. I think that Ubuntu-based distributions get a lot of criticism, and I think Linux Mint unfairly at times gets that criticism. And I think just because Mint sits on top of the Ubuntu repositories and uses the Ubuntu file system, I don't think that it would be fair to group it in with Ubuntu itself. I think it's removed so much of the Ubuntu distribution that it would be really unfair to call it Ubuntu. I think that Mint stands on its own. I think that if you're a new user, it's a phenomenal release for you to try out. I think if you're an advanced user, you're going to find all the tools that you need. So I really think that this is kind of the desktop for everyone. And early Ubuntu used to be that desktop, especially for new users, even advanced users. But I think Linux Mint has become that desktop. So 2 thumbs up. I think the Linux Mint team has done a phenomenal job. I'll be using this particular release for the foreseeable future as my main daily driver, and I couldn't be more happy with the Linux Mint 16 release. I think it's a landmark release for the project. I think they've done a fantastic job, and they've showcased the power of open source. and I'm thrilled with this particular release. I couldn't be happier. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Try Linux Mint 16. If you really appreciate what the project is doing, go over to the Linux Mint website and give them a donation. These individuals, especially the main developer, Clem, does this as his full-time job. This is how he supports his family. And so, if you feel as though that Mint has added something to your tech digital life, and you feel as though that you want to give back in some way, you can make a small donation to the Linux Mint developers, and specifically Clem, the founder of the project. So again, if you guys like this, give the video a thumbs up, share it, leave a comment in the comment section below, and until next time, we'll talk to you guys later.